We're going to be friends with Canada. Regardless of anything, we're going to be friends with Canada. Canada is a very special place to me. I know so many people that live in Canada. My parents had relatives that lived in Canada, my mother in particular. I love Canada. I have a lot of respect for the Canadians. Wayne Gretzky, I mean, how good, the great one. Canada is a very special place.
I have always felt that tariffs are their own punishment, and I still don't understand why Americans want to punish the consumers of aluminum when you get 60% of it from Canada. It's also a product that Americans can't produce themselves. You don't have bauxite, so there is no way to have a homegrown aluminum industry. So we're kind of scratching our heads.
Trump's Commerce Secretary, as well as frequent character in the Epstein files, Howard Lutnick, went in front of the Senate today and said this about Canada.
It is outrageous that Canada will not put U.S. spirits on the shelf. It is insulting.
Look, the only reason Canada is boycotting U.S. spirits is because Trump randomly placed tariffs on Canada out of nowhere. Also, it's not a secret Trump's been trying to bully Canada into becoming the 51st state. Canada did not start this one. Trump did. Obviously, everyone knows it.
If they want to try to annihilate Ontario, I will do everything, including cut off their energy, with a smile on my face. And I'm encouraging every other province to do the same. Quebec, Manitoba, BC, we all have to act in unison. Out east, they rely on our energy. They need to feel the pain. They want to come at us hard. We're going to come back twice as hard.
So check it. Canada threatened to turn off the power in the United States. Look, Canada, just turn the lights out at the White House and at Trump's house or every other house he step his feet in. He needs to sit in the dark and just think about what he be saying and what he be doing. Plus, half of us don't even like him anyways. Don't make us suffer. I mean, some of us did vote for him. The stupidity in them. However, leave us out of this. We ain't got nothing to do with this. I don't know what Pumpkin Spice doing, but I ain't with it.
Work with us on economic issues, work with us on the friendships and the relationships that we have on a personal basis around the world, and work with us on security issues so that we can deliver for the people that own our countries, and we can rebuild the trust that they demand. And we will be amazed at what we can accomplish in a very short period of time.
We're working on trying to get, a phenomenal trade deal that's good for the United States, that's good for Canada. We're working on trying to get a phenomenal security arrangement between the United States and Canada so that our countries are safe. And we're also working on, the president's third priority, which is, the whole law enforcement thing, to go after the drug issues and those types of things to keep our people safe from internal threats.
That is like the worst strategy I've ever heard. They suck. Look, we are a $30 trillion economy, right? We are the consumer of the world. Okay? Carney has a problem with us. He gets on a plane and he goes to China. Does he think the Chinese economy is going to buy his stuff? China is entirely an export-driven economy, right? So what did he do? He came back and said, we'll take their electric cars. I mean, is this not?
What do you say to consumers who are worried about prices, sir?
I don't think you're going to. No, you're going to ultimately have a price reduction because they're going to make their steel here. There's not going to be any tariff. These foreign companies will move to the United States, will make their steel and aluminum in the United States. Ultimately, it'll be cheaper, but we'll also have jobs, many, many more jobs.
The Americans want our resources, our water, our land, our country. Think about it. If they succeeded, they would destroy our way of life.
Why does Trump hate Canada? Because Canada takes care of America. Remember when Canada saved 6 Americans during the Iran hostage crisis in 1979? They have stepped in time and time again, quietly with that classic Canadian calm, and they're doing it again. But this time, they're saving American students. Trump is cutting funding for universities, revoking student visas, deporting students for protesting, trying to control who teaches and who can attend. So Canadian schools are stepping up. University of British Columbia reopened admissions just for Americans. Toronto and Waterloo are seeing spikes in U.S. applications and campus visits. Because when your own country takes away your education, Canada builds a classroom. This is global leadership. Canada to the rescue. Again,
Some Minnesotans are calling for the U.S. state to become a part of this country.
How about since Trump dislikes Minnesota so bad and we're so out of control, let's join Canada.
Former professional wrestler and Minnesota State Governor Jesse Ventura recently pitched the idea. Some Minnesotans are angry over the deployment of federal immigration agents in the state. Ventura, now a political commentator, made the comments on a podcast. Others have followed suit. One resident recently wrote to a publication suggesting the state join Canada and the new province be named Manitoba.
What's your problem with the United States absorbing Canada? If I were a citizen of another country and I was a neighbor of the United States, I would consider it a privilege to be taken over by the United States of America. That's what everybody else in the world wants.
Only person raised on American exceptionalism would say something like that. I don't think any functioning country wants to be taken over by the US. Why? The list is long.
The Americans cannot budge without Canadian oil. And like it or not, and natural gas, we are so integrated on the natural gas side. Think of the Montney gas, where that goes a lot to the United States. Without the Montney, without projects in British Columbia, without Saskatchewan, without Alberta, the United States would have a hard time. Yes, they can sell a lot of their gas in the Marcellus Shale, Allegheny Shale. It comes to me here in Ontario. My gas doesn't come from the west anymore. It comes from just south of the border because of shale. The problem for the Americans is that their fracking and their technology from the early 2000s, the mid 2000s is starting to peak. Yes. They're hitting their nadir. They can't go any higher. They need more. Why? AI. AI is the future, and the only way AI works well is if you've got energy. And the only people who've got disposable energy, unless you're willing to burn a lot of coal, which none of us are prepared to do, is countries like Canada with a lot of natural gas, a lot of energy, and we can that's dispatchable very quickly.
U.S. President Donald Trump has authorized a new pipeline today that would move Canadian oil to the U.S.
Slightly different than the last administration. They wouldn't sign a pipeline deal, and we have pipelines going up.
Now, here's what we know about this. The proposed pipeline is expected to transport Canadian crude from the border to Wyoming and could cost about $2 billion American. The pipeline was proposed by U.S. company Bridger and Canadian company South Bow and would revive portions of the canceled Keystone XL oil pipeline. Now, the project could increase Canada's crude exports to the U.S. by more than 12% if it goes ahead.
So today, Donald Trump said that the United States of America would be better off without a USMCA trade agreement with Canada. And my thought on this is this. I think the whole world would be better off without Donald Trump.
Family, the answer may not be as simple as politics. Trade wars often sound straightforward during campaign speeches, but in reality, they affect millions of businesses. They affect consumers, they affect farmers, they affect manufacturers, and even investors. And so when tariffs are imposed, the intention is usually to make imported goods more expensive so that domestic industries gain a competitive advantage. However, the ripple effects can spread far beyond the original target. And so companies that rely on imported materials face higher costs. Consumers may pay more for everyday products. Supply chains become more complicated. Businesses delay investments because they are uncertain about future conditions. And so as these pressures accumulate, even supporters of aggressive trade policies can begin asking whether the benefits outweigh the costs. And so that appears to be part of the conversation happening now. And so across industries, there is growing recognition that prolonged economic uncertainty can become a problem regardless of the political affiliation. And so markets generally prefer predictability, business prefers stable trading relationships, workers prefer confidence that their employers can continue growing without sudden disruptions. And another factor is the changing global landscape, family. The world economy is far more interconnected than it was decades ago. And so countries are constantly developing new trade partnerships and alternative supply chains. And when one nation attempts to isolate another through tariffs or restrictions, affected countries often look elsewhere for economic opportunities. And so over time, that can create entirely new trading relationships that become difficult to reverse. And so in other words, a trade war may not only hurt today's economic activity, but also influence where future investments are made. And so this is where Canada frequently enters the discussion. Throughout various trade disputes, Canada has often presented itself as a stable and predictable partner. And so businesses seeking certainty tend to value that reputation mostly. And so while political leaders exchange tough rhetoric, investors and corporations usually focus on practical considerations such as costs, such as regulations, such as market access and long-term stability. And so if uncertainty becomes too high in one market family, capital naturally looks for alternatives. And so for many observers, the current shift in tone is less about admitting failure and more about recognizing economic realities. And so political slogans are powerful, family, but economies operate according to incentives, according to costs, and according to consumer behavior. And so if tariffs begin creating more economic friction than strategic advantage, policymakers eventually face pressure to adjust costs. And so that pressure can come from manufacturers concerned about costs, about exporters worried about foreign retaliation, consumers frustrated by higher prices, or financial markets reacting to uncertainty. And so what's particularly fascinating is how quickly narratives can change. And not long ago, trade wars were often described as easy to win, but today discussions increasingly focus on cooperation, focus on negotiations, and even finding common ground. And so that doesn't necessarily mean that the original goals have disappeared. Many policymakers will still want stronger domestic industries and fairer trade agreements. And so the difference is that they may be searching for methods that achieve those objectives without the same level of economic disruption. And so critics argued that this shift proves the trade war strategy was flawed from the beginning. And so supporters counter that the pressure tactics achieved important concessions and forced difficult conversations that otherwise would never have happened. And so the truth may lie somewhere in the middle. And so trade disputes can sometimes create leverage, but maintaining them indefinitely can become costly. So governments often discover that negotiation works best when both pressure and compromise are both available options.